Kailey, Romaine and I are surprised. Is that your sense as well? Did we have any indication that Senator Joe Manchin wouldn't run for re-election?
Well, of course, there's been a lot of conversation here in Washington, really over the course of this entire presidential election cycle, as to whether or not this is someone, given that he is a Democrat who has often broken with the Democratic Party, and increasingly so in more recent history, if he was someone who could actually seek the presidency himself under perhaps the No Labels umbrella. No Labels, of course, an organization that has said if we are looking at a Biden-Trump matchup in 2024, that they would run a candidate. And there has been a lot of conversation about whether or not that ticket could possibly include Joe Manchin. It is unclear if this decision not to seek re-election in the Senate would be directly tied to 2024 or future presidential ambitions. What we know at this time is he said he has considered this deeply with his family. He thinks he has accomplished what he set out to do for West Virginia and is not running. We know he was facing a very tough challenger in the Republican governor of West Virginia, so he was in a tricky spot. But this puts Democrats in a very tricky spot more broadly, considering the Senate is very, very close in terms of the partisan breakup. There's a very small majority for the Democrats. They often have to rely on Vice President Kamala Harris to be a tiebreaker, and losing a Democratic seat potentially could go to a Republican in West Virginia that would hold that seat in the future, and that could potentially disrupt the balance.
Well, that's what I am curious about, and we should point out, I mean, Manchin is, I believe, 76 this year here, yeah. So there is an age factor, of course, an age factor as well for the current president and the current Republican frontrunner as well. But one thing I am curious about here, Kailey, is this idea that a lot of his public stances that Manchin made seem to be, and he's a Democrat, a lot of the decisions he made seemed to veer a little bit more to the right, largely because of his constituency and the pressures that he was facing in West Virginia if he wanted to hold on to his seat. So it raises the question that if he had to do that, does that mean that whoever does end up replacing him will probably have to maybe move a little bit further to the right to ensure some sort of place in the Senate?
Yeah, that's a very good point, Romaine. He has frequently broken with the Democratic Party on a number of issues, energy being a dominant one, considering that West Virginia is a coal state, and he is, sided more so to the right on a lot of those issues in the recent past and pretty consistently throughout his tenure as a United States Senator. So again, it would probably need to be a more conservative leaning Democrat if a Democrat was going to try to get the seat in West Virginia, or ultimately it could be just a seat that goes to the Republican, given the broader leanings of that state in general electoral politics. West Virginia is considered a red state, which is why Joe Manchin often straddled the line and had been one of the more independent voices in the Senate. Of course, he, alongside now independent Senator Kyrsten Sinema of Arizona, had kind of been the Democrats who held out on a lot of what the Biden administration had tried to pursue, and kind of were not kingmakers for legislation in the Senate, but somewhat.